if alcohol is holding you back and it's causing problems in your life, then it is a problem. And I think much of society, it is a problem, but there's a big denial around it.
Hello and welcome back to episode 164 of the Redefining Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Joe Clark. Now, we are entering peak party time with the end of the year celebrations ramping up. So today's conversation is definitely timing. Our guest is Keelie Louise, who works as a sober curious mentor, and she is going to help us navigate the silly season and how we can handle the realities of our alcohol culture and how we can get through this time of the year with the ongoing parties. So welcome to the podcast, Keelie. Lovely to have you.
Thank you, Joe. Really nice to be here.
So we always start at the beginning whenever I have a guest on, Keelie, to find out a little bit more so we can get to know each other better. Tell me more about your growing up years, because obviously you have an English accent. So you're not, I'm right in saying English because I am terrible at picking up where exactly somebody is from. But just tell us more about your early years and what was life like for you?
Yeah, so I was brought up in the UK, so well done. Most people think I'm Irish, in a little town in the northwest called Burnley in Lancashire. I lived with my grandfather. He brought me up. I have two/four sisters. Two of my sisters and my mom live in the US. They went there when I was 15, and spent much of my life in the UK till I was 26. Started drinking pretty heavily when I was 13, up until probably about 4 years ago, and moved to Australia when I was, how old was I? I just turned 30. Also, when I was younger, I did a degree in psychology back in the day. I think part of my degree was just trying to understand myself and fix myself, as somebody who'd kind of suffered from a lot of anxiety and depression and felt like they didn't fit in and not feeling like they were enough for much of my life. So, as most people who've gone along that journey, they feel like they need fixing. So, I did a degree in psych. And then when I finished that, I couldn't get anything in psychology. No one would take me on without experience, but no one would give me that experience. So, I did what everybody in that instance does and fell into 20 years of corporate in the travel industry. And I moved here 11 years ago to be with my ex-husband.
Okay. So Keelie, just rewind back a little bit when you said, which is quite when you hear it, it's always startling that you started drinking and fairly heavily at the age of 13. So what was your introduction to alcohol? Was it the social group you were in with the peer pressure, or was it something else for you?
Think there was a few things.
Yeah.
Where I grew up, there was nothing else to do. It was like there was this, it was like a reward, alcohol. Everybody drank, all of the parents. And, when you're growing up through, when you're younger, you admire the people who are older than you. You admire your parents. And, my grandfather never drank, and my mother didn't drink that much either. So I wasn't exposed to it from a family sense, but I was from like friends and people around me. And it was always that thing. And I remember even from being, I think I was 11 or 12 and going to a wedding and asking for an alcopop. It was hooch back in the day. That was what everyone was drinking. And I asked, oh, please, can I have one? And was allowed one because it was what all of the adults were doing.
Mm.
And I always remember the first drink, and I had a friend round at our house, and I was 13, and my granddad was in bed, and we did have a cupboard of booze, and that was because my great granddad used to drink whiskey, and there was this bottle of Bell's whiskey. And to this day, I still do not like the smell of Bell's whiskey. And me and my friend just got it out, and we started drinking it with lemonade. And I remember we were just like giggling and laughing. We were drunk, and my granddad came down, and we had to hide this whiskey and this bottle of lemonade. And then from there, it just kind of spiraled. It became something that, well, everybody did. We just did it because one, there was nothing else to do. But I think for me, it was a way of being able to fit in.
Yeah.
It was a way of being able to mask, or, and I've the older they've got and the more I've done research around this with having ADHD, is that alcohol actually quietens your mind. So I used to say, and it was the only time I felt like me or the only time I felt free because having ADHD, I've got like 150 tabs open at any one time. Like 10 Energizer bunnies running around in my head as well. So yeah, I think there was a few things for me.
Isn't it interesting because there's such a lot of similarities, particularly in Western cultures, but I think because we come from, many Australians, not all Australians, obviously, because we're such a multicultural society, but many of us come from the UK background,
Hmm.
where alcohol plays an important role. It's everything. We use it to celebrate. We use it to commiserate. We use it for, there as a just a relaxer at the end of the day. And it's such a culture that's rich in it's accessible. It's basically been given the nod from an early age. But so many kids, and I was an early drinker as well, not certainly not 13, but I was an underage drinker. And I was much younger than everybody else when I went through high school and university. So my whole first year of university, I was an underage drinker and just had the best party time. And
Hmm.
it was seen, that was just seen that you do it. There was no, oh my goodness, we shouldn't be drinking. It was one of those things where it was just acceptable. And I think when you're raised in a culture like that, particularly for our generation of women, I I know I've got children who are younger now, well, my own children, and they're it's not, and from the studies that I've seen as well, Keely, drinking isn't as prevalent as it was in our generation. So
Hmm.
there must be lots of women who are listening, hearing your story, just me sharing what I've said would be in agreement. Yeah, alcohol was really accessible. It was a little bit of sneaking around at certain points, but on the whole, it was just one of those things that many people participated in at a very young age, and it was always part of life.
Yeah. A great marketing tool, right? And
Yeah.
I think the funny thing is where I came from was, like I said, there was this celebration that when you turned 18, you could go out with your parents or your friends' parents for a
Or
drink.
finally legal.
You were finally legal and you would celebrate it. And
Yeah.
I actually remember the first time I went to a nightclub when I turned 18 and I had this happy 18th birthday banner on. And bear in mind, like, I talked to anybody, so I knew all of the doormen. And I'd been going there for like 3, 4 years, and they'd all been like, "You're 18?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Oh,
And they were
classic.
like, "No, you cannot be." And I was
Oh,
like, "Yeah." But what could they say?
yeah.
There was nothing they could say. They had to let me in. But yeah, that was quite funny.
Mm. So, as well, can you share just a little bit about your career path? And you mentioned that you did psychology and then you got into travel. How then did you get into this work that you're doing today, which is vastly different from working in the travel industry and corporate? So,
Yeah. So I think growing up and just feeling like I didn't fit in for all of my life,
mhm.
there was this real, I felt like I was destined for something. And, that's not me saying that I'm better than anybody or, I just had this thing, I don't know what it is, this inner um, guide that is telling me that I have a gift and I'm here to help people make a difference in their lives. And I've always felt that on some level, but I think the alcohol kind of hid that for me.
Mm.
And so as I said, I had 20 years in corporate and never really enjoyed the corporate lifestyle. Felt in most roles that I was in that I had my wings clipped, that I was put in this cage, and that is partly down to my ADHD again and spending a lot of time masking. I felt like I had to be somebody in these roles that I was in, and I wasn't fully aware of who I was as a person. So it's quite challenging to go into that. And also, on some level, I wasn't really doing anything that was impactful. Yes, it was travel and it's a beautiful experience. And, I got to create some beautiful things, but still it wasn't me. And I think as I went along that journey, and funny enough, I was in a job up until I was 30, and that was when I went traveling for a little while and met my ex-husband. Um, and I got made redundant from that. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to travel. I'll travel, and then when I come back, I'll get back into what I love, which and what I want to do, which was making a difference in people's lives, whatever capacity that was. And then I came to Australia on holiday and met my ex-husband 3 days before I was due to travel back home, and moved here to be with him 6 months later. And so at that point, I was on a working holiday visa, and it was, so what do I do now? Well, I can't go down the path that I really wanted to go down, because if I do that, then I'm going to struggle to get a job. So I fell back into the travel industry and had some wonderful years here. And then came along COVID. And I was working in corporate travel. I got stood down, and sadly, at the start of COVID, I lost my grandfather. Started drinking quite heavily again. And then when I went back to work, it was the September, and as everything started to pick up in the new year. And then when things started to pick up, I spent my days getting shouted at on a daily basis because I was the top level relationship manager for all of these companies that we were booking travel for. And we didn't have any consultants available because everybody had been stood down to be able to service their bookings. So I was getting the brunt of it every day. And then I was just like, what am I doing? Why am I putting myself through this? This is not where my passion is.
Mm.
And, throughout the years of suffering from depression and anxiety, and going through all these major life transitions of moving to a new country, living with a boy for the first time, and just experience in life, I'd always had one foot still in the psychology realm of things, and just learning and growing and trying to understand, fix myself. And then I left my job at the end of COVID, didn't have a job to go to, and decided that I was going to do something that would bring joy to my life. And I spent a little bit of time out. I got a job with a coaching company, so in a corporate sense, and we did leadership development coaching for large enterprise customers. And so I worked in relationship management for that. And then as I was doing that, I also was doing a diploma in positive psych, which changed my life, was absolutely amazing. And then I separated from my husband last year, mutually separated from my career, and also had a minor surgery. So I basically rebuilt the whole of my life. By the end of last year, nothing was the same in my life. And in the middle of the year, a lady that I used to work with came to me and asked her to coach, if I would coach. She asked me if I would coach her. And that's how I fell into it. It was just kind of by chance. And I was like, well, I've been through so much in my life and had so many life transitions, and just had the ability to reinvent myself. And people see that through my energy. And so I was like, well, maybe there are other people out there who want me to do a similar thing.
Mm. It's interesting, isn't it, how you can sometimes fall into what you're doing. That certainly was my case as well. Leaving a career that you weren't expecting to leave, and then all of a sudden you develop something completely different. Can you tell me then, how did your relationship with alcohol look over those years? And, how did it fit into your lifestyle, your friendships, your identity? What was that turning point for you?
Oh gosh, so much to unpack there, Joe.
It is.
To me, it was everything. It was my identity. I'd used it for so long. It was a way to cover up everything. It dulled my side. I was chatting to someone the other day, and I liken it to my life was in black and white, and now my life's in color.
Mm.
Every little thing that I hadn't even realized was alcohol. I think because we're conditioned to drink, and we drink from such a young age, as we age, our body has less ability to deal with what we're putting in it. But because we've been drinking for so long, and we start having ailments, we don't attribute the ailments to alcohol, because that's something that's been in our lives for years. So why would we even question that? It's definitely not. And I think on some level, there's always that reliance on alcohol, and there's a fear from society of admitting that, and from most people, because they're afraid of who they are, who they might be if they don't have alcohol in their lives.
Mm.
So connection, I realized that, and don't get me wrong, I still have people from when I was drinking still in my life, but you find it's a different connection, especially when you're growing up and you're drinking quite heavily. You realize that you don't actually have a lot in common with these people other than going out and drinking and socializing. Because if you're not there, then you don't hear from these people.
Mm.
And, similar with your identity, it's tied to, will I be fun? Where is my confidence going to come from? How am I going to speak to people? So everything in my life was tied to alcohol. And people ask me if I was an alcoholic, and I don't think I was an alcoholic by societal standards. However, for me, if alcohol is holding you back and it's causing problems in your life, then it is a problem. And I think much of society, it is a problem, but there's a big denial around it.
Mm. What was a turning point for you when you went, right, I've had enough. Things have got to
Yeah.
change.
As I mentioned at the start of COVID, my granddad passed. I
Yes.
couldn't leave Australia, and I couldn't get back for the funeral because I wasn't sure if I could even, no one could leave the country. There was no flights. We couldn't really get back in. So that hit me pretty hard. He brought me up. He was everything to me. And I started drinking a lot more. As with most people, I think we were up at like 9 a.m. and it was like, oh, it's always 5 p.m. somewhere in the world. Let's crack open a
Mhm.
bottle of wine or whatever. And just having late nights. And I think it was just something to do to fill a lot of our time. Over the years, I think I'd realized, especially with the anxiety and the depression, it had always had a really big impact on my mental health. But until I think that point, wouldn't say I was able to deal with it. I dealt with it. I wasn't able to deal with it, but I did. And I realized that I took a step back and realized that when I was drinking, every week I would want to kill myself because of
Oh,
the impact that it was having on me mentally. Every Tuesday, randomly a Tuesday.
oh,
And then by Friday, I would just start feeling better again and I would be drinking on a weekend.
mhm.
So it wasn't an everyday, always thing. Granted, through COVID, any day you would drink. Uh, but I think I just got to a point where I was like, what am I doing with my life? If something doesn't change, I can't deal with this mentally. I can't deal with thinking that I want to kill myself every week and questioning who's going to miss me if I'm gone.
Mm.
And then one night, it was the back end of COVID, and we could meet in a park. We were allowed to meet friends in a park. Melbourne had it really, really tough in
Yes,
terms of the
yes.
lockdown, as
You
you know,
guys
and
really did.
it was pretty
Mm.
brutal. And I laugh about it now, but I'm sure everyone still has PTSD. Me and my husband met some friends in a park, and we brought everyone back to our house. There was 3 people. We had a cupboard that just was full of liquor. And I'd had a few to drink by then, and I pulled out a $300 bottle of tequila and started making everybody shot this bottle of tequila. And standard on when I used to drink quite a lot, I would then start rapping to the musical of Hamilton. That was one of my favorites. That and the Phantom of the Opera, dancing around. And it is laughable. And then, one of our friends was still there and I was play fighting with him. And then I passed out and can't remember anything else, which I generally did. I black out most nights, what would when I drank, and spend the night hugging the toilet and throwing up, or into the next day and the next night, most times as well. I woke up the next day and was like, no recollection of the rest of the night. And my husband said, oh, you don't remember last night? And so I threw up all over the floor and the dog ate my sick. And I was like 38 years old. what am I doing with my life? Like, this is not how I want to be. This is not where I'm supposed to be at 38 years old, and I'm passing out. If I don't do something, then this is not okay.
Mm, mm. So that was the moment. That was the realization. Okay.
Yeah. And I think a week later, I had my last glass of wine, and
Right.
was like that. It was kind of a bit of a symbolic thing. It was the 22nd of October, 2021. And there have been a few times in that first few months where I threw myself off the wagon and had some drinks. And, there were a few notable times where I got really drunk. And then the last time I touched anything was the January of 2022.
Gotcha. Oh, well, congratulations for going that long without having
Thank
any
you.
alcohol then. And you've
Thank you.
survived. And like you
Oh,
said, like you said, you went from a life that was black and white to almost a technicolor. So
mm.
what surprised you the most when you did go alcohol free? Was it physically, mentally, socially, or everything?
Oh, everything. I feel better. I sleep better. I want to nourish my body. I've always admired the mindset of athletes, their ability to train, push themselves through, and, do the unachievable in most instances. Yet when I was drinking, I could barely go to the gym 2 days a week.
Mm,
I didn't have the energy. And sometimes even if I went 2 days a week, I'd burn out. I'd spend the weekends. I could do one thing on a weekend, and that would be me. I just didn't have the energy to do anything else. So I think the energy and being able to just live my life now. I train 4 or 5 days a week. I'm active out all the time. My sleep is amazing. I get 8 hours sleep every night at least. What I want to put in my body is healthy stuff. I don't want to get takeaway anymore. On the odd occasion, every now and again, I'll order a pizza or whatever, but generally, my body doesn't want that. Uh, I find my productivity, my focus is just amazing. Whilst I'm doing this, I coach at a gym, and I do have a corporate job still that I do 4 days a week, which is still in coaching.
mm,
And yeah, I would not be able to do that had I still been drinking.
mm. Yeah, that's amazing. So tell me, but we'll talk more about the wine culture or the alcohol culture that particularly we sort of touched on
Mm.
earlier. Why do you think this message has become so normalized, especially for women? Because when you think about it, so many women, again, once they get to the midlife stage, when they're busy entrenched with the jobs, busy with the family, it's easy just to have that glass of wine to, in inverted commas, to wind down, to, just to ease you through the madness and the chaos of what the day was and what you've still got unfolding in front of you. Why do you think that's really been even marketed to for women?
Mhm. I think there's a few reasons. I think one is the societal norms that we're trying to live up to, and we're all masking in some shape or form and trying to fit in with society.
Mm,
And the more we try and fit in with society, the more we move away from the people that we are. And I think on some level, one, alcohol allows us to fit in, but it also gives us an out from actually dealing with what we're using alcohol to pick up.
mm,
So generally, I find that most people, you know, I always say that when people say, I need something, there's a form of control there. So when people say at the end of the day, I need a glass of wine, well, it's why do you need that glass of wine? Why are you actually reaching for it? Kind of what is the underlying thing? Because quite often we're trying to run away from something. So on top of that societal things, I also think we as women, again, in that societal, we're people pleasers. Again, that goes back to the societal norms that have been put on us, and we don't necessarily know who we are, especially if you're a woman who, you're married, you have children. and you have spent your life living for your husband and your children. And I think it gives us a bit of a sense of relief to be able to have that glass. And, we know that wine or whatever people's vice is and wine o'clock, and it gives us dopamine. It gives us, so we drink it, and then there's this beautiful sense of euphoria, and we think that, wow, this is amazing. And yes, it does, it gives us a dopamine. But say your baseline is there, you've got this dopamine high, but then your dopamine goes right the way down, and because you're not earning the dopamine that you're getting. So the more you do this, the further and further away from your baseline you are, and the more you're trying to have to bring yourself back up to this baseline. So I think on some level there's that, and we're all living in this Uber Eats society where we're used to getting what we want, and these dopamine hits right away, and wine is one of those, or alcohol is one of those.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And it's so counterintuitive when we know probably deep down that we maybe shouldn't be
Mm.
having this drink, but it's just one of those things where, I know I'm just going to feel that little bit more relaxed if I do have a
Yes.
glass. So let's talk about burnout, particularly for women. And I know it can be another one of those things where you're exhausted at the end of the day.
Hmm.
You're stressed, you're wanting to escape from somebody. So what does burnout often look like when alcohol is part of that, the coping cycle?
Yeah. I think it helps mask it. You think it helps mask it in some way.
Mm.
The really interesting thing is that, similar with the dopamine reaction, we think it reduces our stress levels. However, it actually, yes, it may do for that little bit that you're getting that dopamine as well as your stress, but actually after it inhibits our ability to cope. So it's actually, so say without alcohol, your stress levels are here, it's reducing your capacity to be able to cope. So quite often, and with anything, whether it's burnout or, and you're reducing your ability to be able to cope with the stress. So your stress is higher, which is then leading to burnout quicker. You're not getting that sleep. We know that when you drink, it affects our REM sleep, which is what we need to be able to have a good night's sleep. Alcohol also stops your fat burning. So if you're drinking a few glasses of wine, it can stop from anywhere to 12 to 36 hours in terms of being able to metabolize and burn any fat in your body. It also stops your mitochondria as well, which is your cells being reproduced. So it's not only, the impact of what we see and what we think it's doing, it's that other side of it. Our skin as well, it has an impact on our collagen production. If you have a heavy night, then it can stop your collagen production for 30 days.
Mm.
So there's all these, it all adds up. If your cells are not producing and reproducing correctly, you're not getting enough sleep. Your liver's all you're doing when you're putting alcohol is trying to get rid of the poison in your body. So everything else that's going on in your body is just focused on the alcohol. So essentially it's just adding to it. And the sad thing is we still don't really see this as a society, and we are burnt out, and women are exhausted. And then we touched on it before, but then you go into perimenopause and menopause, and
Yeah.
people are not picking up on the impact that alcohol's having on us.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I've had on that podcast before, I've had a number of women's health experts coming on, doctors and professors, talking about the implications and what happens when with alcohol in a woman's body, particularly during peri. And I just noticed that my tolerance for alcohol has plummeted. I
Mhm.
mean, I did used to enjoy. I went through a stage of probably drinking far too much, but I wouldn't have said I had a drinking problem because it wasn't something that I had to do. It was something that I enjoyed to do.
Yeah.
Um, and it was only maybe one night a week doing that. But now I can have one glass, and that I'm satisfied with that because, like you say, it affects my sleep. Something shocking. I
Mm-hmm.
wake up with the heart palpitations, my mind racing at 3 o'clock in the morning, just horrendous. And I've got to the point where it's just not bloody worth it.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like this. Maybe I could push through that 15, 20 years ago, but I'm not willing to do that anymore when already my sleep can be a bit touch and go. I don't
Yeah.
want to wake up feeling wrecked the night after. And I know many of my friends feel the same at this stage of life when they've gone through peri or and maybe they're postmenopausal. That it just doesn't hit like it used to. Have you
Mm.
noticed that with any of your clients that they're saying the same sorts of things to you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It does as I mentioned before, I think as our bodies change and evolve, our hormones, what we're putting in them becomes really, really important because it does have an impact on us. And towards the end, I would feel the same about one glass of wine when before I stopped was I would have a hangover the next day and still feel down or
Mm.
whatever. And a lot of my clients feel the same. It's about, I always say to people as well, for me, now I'm not telling people to stop drinking. This is their journey and one they have to go along themselves. For me, it's about asking people to get curious. So, in those moments where you're having that one drink, what is it doing to you? How are you sleeping?
Mm.
What are you reaching for it for? And what void is it essentially trying to fill? How do you feel the next day, regardless of that sleep? And what does it matter? Why are we reaching for those glasses? So, yeah.
The social pressure, though, is it's interesting because I've got a couple of friends who still are in the full party mode. How they
Mm,
do it, I do not know, but that's
good for them.
all power to them. I just can't and won't anymore. But yeah, that sometimes a bit of pressure for you to join them because that was a social currency that you had. And yeah,
Yeah.
great fun. But now I'm not wanting, or not. I'm just saying me in this case. It's not just me. Not wanting to partake in that anymore. So there's almost like a social currency that you
Yeah.
spoke about earlier. With friends to have that dynamic. And yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that you feel like you've got to please people. Okay, I'll have one with you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's craziness. We've just got
Mm.
to, I think, feel much stronger in ourselves at times. And having gone through that personally, of I can go out now and I don't need to have a drink,
Mm.
whereas before I felt that I had to have a drink.
Yeah. Let me ask you this because I think that is there is this really challenging thing when you start going along that journey and you're going out and quite often you're holding a mirror up to people's behavior, and so when you're saying I don't really want to drink or I'm choosing not to drink, people are like, go on, just have one. Are you pregnant? Are you on antibiotics? Like, why? And, I think once you've moved past that, it doesn't happen as much. Have you found that?
Yeah.
Because people are now like, oh, she doesn't drink. That's fine. People have accepted you for that. But that first part is really challenging because you're holding a mirror up to their behavior. And again, it goes back to what you're saying. Like on some level, on some deep level, we know that alcohol is not serving us.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, we talk about I don't care as much anymore what people think, and to a point that's true. But those who are in our social circle, if we feel that pressure, I think sometimes we are concerned about what are they going to think? What
Mhm.
might people say? So how then, if we're going into this really busy party season, and it is big because there's always a get together before the end of the year happens, and then we've got New Year, so we're celebrating that from about November onwards, and that's why this is such a timely episode. There's just nonstop social interactions,
Mhm.
dinners, lunches, catch ups, drinks after work, whatever it might be. How then do we get through that? If we're choosing to go, right, this year I'm not going to have as many drinks, or I'm
Mhm.
choosing not to drink at all, what sort of things do we do to prepare ourselves
Yeah.
for that? And how do we handle the social pressures that we might be getting from the outside?
Yeah. Amazing question and some really great my personal thinking around that and my thoughts, what really helped me was firstly, I think this is a beautiful time actually to get curious about it. So you've got 6 weeks leading up to Christmas. This is a great opportunity because there is so much going on to be able to get curious. So in these situations, what is it looking like? How are you feeling around that peer pressure? Why do you feel the need to give in and take a drink? The thing that really helped me was setting expectations. So, no, dependent on who I was going out with, I would message them beforehand and say, just to let you know that I'm choosing not to drink alcohol. I would really love your support on this. This, you don't even, if you feel comfortable telling them the reasons, then absolutely. If you don't, then that's okay. That really helped me set myself up for success. The other thing, again, in a work and corporate setting, because that can be really hard. There are a lot of settings out there in a work setting
Mm.
where you feel peer pressure. And I think more so sometimes than in your social group, you feel that pressure because these people are not your people. You're brought together by your corporate sense. So in that instance, I would often sometimes walk around with a wine glass, but I would have sparkling water in it. So that helps, but also have maybe one person that you have that conversation with so that you've got a bit of a confident there and you've got someone to help manage your own expectations. A huge one for all this is your why. Understanding your why. Why do I not want to drink? Why am I choosing not to drink? And what does that mean? And coming back to that, maybe also you want to have a little accountability buddy who isn't going to be there with you. So, someone that you can message if you're feeling like you've got that pressure, or you can nip out and have a quick call with them. I had one more and I've just completely forgot what it was.
No judgment here, don't you worry.
Oh my gosh, there we go. Perimenopause at its best, right?
That's it exactly. In a nutshell. I
In
had a
a
really
nutshell.
great thing to say and it's
I
gone.
was like,
It'll,
what
with a
was
bit of
that?
luck, it'll come a little bit
Oh
later in the episode. So
my
totally get you. That's why I have a pencil every time I'm doing an interview because I'll forget otherwise. Yeah, when you
Yes.
were talking about all of that, I was thinking, no is a complete answer. We've been taught that no is a complete answer, yet we feel like we've got to explain why. No, I'm not
Yes.
having it because whatever, whatever. And you just say no. No, thanks.
Yeah.
I just, it feels like we've got to make an excuse for why we are choosing something. And that's crazy. Not only do we have to think about, our relationship and why we're choosing not to, why do we feel like we have to
Yeah.
explain every bloody thing to everybody, even to those who are closest to us? Just no, I don't
Yeah.
want one. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
I
it.
think because people are expecting a response
Yeah.
and it's like, why are you expecting a response? I don't have to want to do this.
Mm.
Okay, I've got it.
Oh, I
FOMO.
knew it would come. Well
FOMO.
done, you.
I
Well
have
done.
two, so I'm going to say them while I've got it. So FOMO. The other one's gone. Let me talk about FOMO. Changing how we speak to ourselves is the
Yes.
second one. So keep me honest on that. So with the FOMO piece, it's important that we change our FOMO. So for me, previously, I would have had FOMO on fun. I want to drink because I want to be the fun one and I don't want to miss out on all of the fun. But now I have FOMO if I don't have a good night's sleep, if I don't wake up ready to attack the day. So, what is your FOMO? What is out removing alcohol or choosing not to drink alcohol doing to your night out and your FOMO? What is your new FOMO? Switch that. Also, with that mindset piece, is how we talk to ourselves about it. So rather than thinking this alcohol has a hold on us and that we have to drink because of peer pressure, think that we're free. Think that we are free from a hold that alcohol has on us because it does have a hold on us. And there's something really, really empowering in that. And choosing to and get to. So I get to go out and not have a drink. I choose to go out and not have a drink. When we start saying the words like need or should, there's a real control and power over those words. And I find them even when I say I need, I'm like, oh, I stop panicking because there's like this sense of control around it, but just changing how we talk to ourselves and how we think about these situations as
Mm,
well.
mm. Yeah, because at the end of this crazy end of year, beginning of the year season of celebrate, nonstop celebrations, you get to the end of it and you go, oh God, I feel revolt. I'm
Mm.
eating too much, I'm drinking too much, I feel really sluggish. So when you have that, what it could feel like, it is completely different. It's just such a much better feeling to wake up, as you're saying, with more energy, to get a good night's sleep. And you are ready to socialize again the next time and then not, wonder what crazy thing came out of your mouth the night before. But
Yes. Oh, here you've text.
yeah.
Yep.
So tell me, what surprised you about this version of you that you've become now? You are alcohol free, doing the sorts of work that you're doing with other people in this space.
I think my energy is one. It's probably the biggest thing, actually. Also, my ability to deal with situations. So when I was drinking, my emotional regulation wasn't the best. I was used to be very snappy. I used to be very angry and very short-tempered, as well as just feeling dull, lifeless, like I was just going through the motions of life. Whereas now I feel, in general, I feel contentment, I feel gratitude, and I just have a beautiful sense of contentment with my life, which I never thought I would have. As I said, I always felt like I was destined for something,
Mm,
and I didn't think it would feel like this. I wanted it to feel like this, I think, on some level, but I never thought it would feel as good as it did. And so I think a lot of it is just I think on some levels it was the alcohol, but also I think it's a credit to myself and the work that I've put in to be able to get here. You know, I'm sure that a lot of people are listening will resonate with this. We spend our lives working towards something and putting a lot of hard work in. And for me, that was my mindset, my ability to learn and grow and become self-aware. And I've got to a phase now where I'm very self-aware and I want to continue learning and growing. However, people look at where I am now and they think it's just, oh, here she is. And they don't see that this has taken me 42 years to get here to where I am today. And every day there's still something that I work on or have the ability or try and change. So I think as much as, it's it's all surprised me in terms of getting here, it's not because I've done small incremental changes to be able to get to where I am today.
mm, mm. Yeah. Now, who wouldn't want more of what you've got now, what you're experiencing now for yourself from where you were to where you are now? Well done. What do you wish more women knew about this sober, curious movement?
That it's magical, that and I've got goosebumps when I say that you can come back to the person that you always knew that you could be,
Mm,
and you can find energy, you can find life, you can find belonging and meaning on a level that you didn't know was possible. We again, and I think a lot of it is societal norms. When we have children or we age, we put labels on ourselves as mothers, as old, as whatever they may be, and then we fall into those labels. And we move as we age, we move away from a sense of fun, from a sense of awe and a sense of wonder. And for me, being able to remove alcohol from my life enabled me to find all of those. And if I can do it where I was in terms of a very, very dark place on numerous occasions, then anybody can do it.
mm. Yeah. So where's a nice, gentle place that women could start if they're thinking, right? And again, we always make promises to ourselves at the start of a new year, it's going to be different this year, or this is how I'm going to face whatever I've got ahead. What's a nice general place for them to start?
So if you're ready to, depends what stage they're in.
Of
If
course.
they're still thinking a little sober curious and they're not necessarily fully ready for that journey, there's a beautiful, very supportive and amazingly knowledgeable community on Instagram that shares a lot of sober curious stuff and a lot of stories on there from people who are sharing their experiences. I would that curious piece as well is a huge one. Like, why are you drinking? What does it look like for you? What are you trying to avoid? And then I would also ask people to think about the life that they want to create. Is who is the person that you want to be? I think part of my journey and why I've got to the place that was I was very intentional about when I was drinking and I didn't know my values. I didn't understand who I was as a person and the person that I wanted to be. So I think for me, values, knowing those uh, they're your compass, they're your rules in life in terms of what to live by. And it doesn't, the beautiful thing about values is it doesn't have to be the person that you are at that moment in time. It can be whoever you want to be in terms of what you're trying to create. And that for me, I think is just key to then going on to understanding your boundaries and moving away from that people pleasing.
Mm. And maybe it is having a good hard look if you're in a social group where alcohol is expected to be a part, is having having a good look at that social circle if it's not in your best interest as well. As hard as that might be, it's finding a different community perhaps to help you.
100%. And I think that is one of the most challenging things because when you decide to remove alcohol, not everybody in your circle is ready to remove alcohol or is going to remove alcohol. And so if you can find a community, gyms are amazing. Generally, people who are in gyms, you're going to have a like-minded bunch of people. Um, there's walking clubs that you can join. There's all these social events that you can join to find yourself a new tribe if that's what you're ready for.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of people out there on Instagram, as I said, reach out, find my goal for next year is actually to create a community of these women that we can all come together and it's not necessarily just sober curious, but just people who want to become the best versions of themselves and who can all just be enough together and just be themselves. And yes, it will be sober and I'll put events on and things like that, but there are a lot more of this kind of stuff popping up as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. There will be. You just have to look for that. So if people are interested in the work that you do, I've got links to your website and to your Instagram account that will be in the show notes. But if you want to share that here before we wrap up.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. I'm the sober hype girl, and Keelie Louise at .com.au is my website as well.
Great. So as I said, it'll be in the show notes as well for
Thank you.
people. So finally, Keelie, what do you hope that 80-year-old you is going to say about current day Keelie?
She did it. She just made it through.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think, we spend our lives thinking that life is sunshine and rainbows and but life isn't. It's hard. We all have different trials and tribulations that we're dealing with on a daily basis. And yeah, to just get to 80 and be like, wow, I've done it.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today and having this very important conversation that we need to talk about. We need to be aware. And even if it's just struck a chord with somebody who's going to take a different angle of how they're going to approach this end of the year and the silly season coming up. I hope it's done that for at least one listener. If it has, we have succeeded
Yes.
in,
Oh,
in helping and
absolutely.
supporting.
And yeah, I would love to hear your journey as well for anyone listening and who is struggling and wants to reach out and have a conversation, please do so.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Keelie.
Thank you, Joe.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate, follow, and share it with another incredible midlife woman. And join me next week as we keep creating an amazing second half of life.